So it says Abraham woke up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took his 2 young men with him, and Isaac his son. He split the wood for the offering, and Solomon went to the place which God spoken to him. Now again, there's an enormous amount of material here. I'm just doing Rashi. So Rashi says he rose early. One second. Okay, I do want to make a comment here. The word in Hebrew is Vayashkem Avraham Baboker. Well, I'm sorry for the translations, but Vayashkem Baboker does not mean he woke up at all. It's not talking about waking up. It's not talking about getting up. It's not talking about arising. None of that. The verb lashkem, which I learned from my second son, the verb lashkem means to start the activities of a period of time early in that period of time. Lashkem means to start the activities of a period of time early in that period of time. And the proof is that God says to Samuel the prophet, I've had it with Saul. I don't want him to be king anymore. I'm going to remove him. And it says Samuel prayed to God all night. Vayashkem baboker. It doesn't mean he woke up. He was up all night. He wasn't praying to God lying down. So he didn't get up, didn't arise. He prayed to God all night. And then early in the morning, he set out with the affairs of the day. So here, that's what Vayashkem has to mean. Abraham started the activities of the preparations early in the day. So Rashi comments, he hastened to perform the commandment. In other words, God told him the previous day what to do, like maybe at night, and the first opportunity to get it done is at the first dawning of light, when he can go and gather the wood and prepare the donkey and so forth and so on. So he did it as this is to show that he I put it in Hebrew. I'll have to translate it for you. I forgot to translate it. So he did it because he wanted not to delay performance of the mitzvah. Then the verse says that he saddled his donkey. Rashi says, he himself, he did not command one of his servants, because love causes a disregard for the standard of dignified conduct. In other words, Avram was a rich man. He had lots of followers, lots of servants. Why did he saddle his donkey? That's a very demeaning thing to do. Thank you very much. So that's what Rashi says. Now, Devin Ezra, on a similar passage, says something else. I wrote a few here. When Jacob comes down to Egypt, and Joseph, who's viceroy in Egypt, knows he's coming, and he comes to greet his father, it says, he prepared his chariot. He prepared his chariot himself. And Rashi says the same thing over there. The Devin Ezra says over there, he did it with a command. The opposite of Rashi. The opposite. He did it with a command to his servants. And he proves it. Devin Ezra proves it because there's a verse in the Book of Kings which says that Solomon built the temple. Now, you don't think that Solomon went to Lebanon to cut down the cedars himself, do you? You don't think that he wove the tapestries, do you? You don't think he did the metalwork with the gold and copper, do you? No, he commanded thousands of people to work on these projects. Even though it says he built the tabernacle, but it means he built it by giving commands to the various workers who are supposed to do it. So Devin Ezra says the same thing is true of Joseph preparing the chariot, and by implication, he would say here also, Abraham saddled his donkey. It doesn't mean he did it. He gave orders that it should be done. Okay? Rashi doesn't accept that. Rashi does not accept that. Why not? So I told you there are several principles in Rashi. One of the One of the principles in Rashi is that what the Torah tells, according to the way you explain the Pshat, what the Torah says should be something that's significant. So it teaches you something. Teaches you how to live. Teaches you how to conduct your life. Teaches you how God runs the world. Here, according to the Ibn Ezra, he told the servant to saddle a donkey. So forget it. Why do I need to know that? Do I need to know that it's a donkey had a saddle? Who cares? Doesn't say what they ate for breakfast. Doesn't say what he told Sarah about the trip. Sarah, we're going to be gone for a few days, and maybe not all of us will come back. Aren't there like things you'd like to know? And the text leaves all this stuff out. According to Ibn Ezra, and it seems clear from many places in the Ibn Ezra, that that is not a principle for him. The words say what they say, and if you can't figure out why it's important, too bad. They say what they say, don't give me anything else. So Rashi says, I'm sorry, I take it as a point of principle in this text. This text is not going to tell you things that aren't important. And therefore, I'm going to explain the basic meaning in terms of the commitment of the text. You could say style, but it's stronger than just style. It's that the purpose of the text is to give you instructions how to live. Just thinking now. That's very interesting. And that being the case, it's not going to be acceptable to just have to translate the words and be left with a trivial piece of information that has no significance. I'm thinking now, maybe the very first Rashi, which we skipped, in part comes to introduce this idea. Because the very first Rashi in Chumash, he says the Chumash really should have started with the first commandment, which tells you to sanctify the month. Why did it start with all this narrative? And the reason it should have started with the commandment is because it is Torah, which is teaching. It's teaching you something. It's not multiplication tables. It's not memorizing hundreds of organic molecules. It's teaching you something. And that's the case. That informs his commentary all the way through. What does this teach me? If it says he gave an order and that a donkey was saddled, it doesn't teach me anything. It would have been skipped over. Maybe there's a connection there, which I didn't realize before. Okay. I wanted you to realize that that's the difference between the Rashi and the Ibn Ezra on how he understands these things. Okay. Verse 4 on 103. On the third day, Aaron raised his eyes and perceived the place from afar. Now, it won't be obvious to you that there's a problem here. The problem here is a problem scenario. It means that God gave Abraham the command 2 days' journey from the place. Why did he do that? Why didn't he have him do it someplace close? Or why didn't God arrange it that he should be in that vicinity and then give him the command? There has to be a reason why God gave him the command here, do something which is going to take place 2 days later. And Rashi explains that. It was similar to what I said to you yesterday about a similar idea. Why did he delay from showing it to him immediately? So that people should not say he confused him and confounded him suddenly and deranged his mind. And if he had had time to think it over, he wouldn't have done it. There were 2 nights in between. Can't travel at night. He's sitting there in front of the fire and thinking. For 6 hours, 8 hours. Abraham had plenty of time to think about it. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? How does it fit? How does it relate to other things? And when he did it in a decided frame of mind. Even that was important. You see often another principle in Rashi. He's worried about what the onlooker is going to say. He's worried about the observer is going to say. He's worried about the reader is going to say. He's worried about people with a skeptical mind. That's one of the reasons why the Torah writes things, according to Rashi. All these things come out in terms of Rashi's method. Okay, now let's go to the next document, which picks it up from there. So, verse 5. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here by yourselves with the donkey, while I and the lad will go yonder. We will worship. The literal word in the Hebrew is to prostrate ourselves, and we will return to you. Anything bother you about that statement?
We will return.
Yeah, like we will return to you. What's supposed to happen up there? I think isn't it supposed to be that only one comes back, not two? Okay, so Rashi answers that. So first of all, he says, okay, let's skip the yonder. I meant to cut it out, I forgot. And return. He prophesied that they would both return. Right? That is to say, Abraham prophesied without realizing it. That happens. From time to time, the prophet says something, and he doesn't appreciate what he's saying. It's as if Abraham said it, we'll go and come back,
Don't worry.
because that's what you would say. Wait for us here. We'll go and come back. Let me just check the Hebrew now, because there's a problem with the English versus the Hebrew. Yes, and you see in the Hebrew, there's no repetition of the word we. In English, you repeat the pronouns. In Hebrew, you don't do that. So it was if it had written, we will worship and return. Not we will worship and we will return. If you read that in English, you think, oh, look, he said we twice, so that's really serious, No, it's just two verbs. So there's nothing to analyze from the point of view of the we. But it's important to know that there is such a concept that a prophet can say something, not realizing what he's saying, and not meaning it. And even some like Abraham.
Kind of like a slip of the tongue.
I'm sorry?
Kind of like a slip of the tongue.
Yes, that's right. But in this case, it turns out that it was prophetic because they did both come back, in a sense anyway. Okay, verse 6. Abraham took the wood for the offering and placed it on Isaac his son. He took in his hand the fire and the knife, and the two of them went together. Now, fire, what they did in those days, you had a fire, let's say burned all night. In the morning, you took coals from the fire and put them in a jug and carried the jug. And if things worked out the way you hoped, by the time you came to the new place to camp for the night, some of the coals would still be burning, and you used that to ignite the evening's fire. So you carried the fire with you. And instead of rubbing two sticks together, using flint stones or whatever it is to start from scratch. So here they're carrying the fire up to the up the hill. Second. Come on. Now, the end of this verse is, the end of verse 6 is, and the two of them went together. At this point, the reader says, oh yeah? You didn't think I could figure that out? You thought maybe I was wondering they were going separately? And by the way, when the four of them set out 2 days ago, it doesn't say they went together. So something's going on here. And if you just glance ahead and you notice that at the end of verse 8, it says again they went together. So something really is going on here. So Rashi is at pains to explain that the togetherness that the verse is telling you isn't obvious. It doesn't mean you take the high road and I'll take the low road. That's not. It doesn't mean to exclude that. So look what Rashi says. Both went together. Abraham, who knew that he was going to slaughter his son, was going as willingly and joyfully as Isaac, who was unaware of the matter. Here you might expect Isaac's going to perform a sacrifice, as they have done many times in the past, as you will see instantly, and he's full of joy at doing the mitzvah. What's going on in Abraham's mind? He's going to slaughter his son. Could it be that mentally they're utterly divided from one another? Yeah. So the answer is no, because half of Abraham's mind is that he's joyful at doing the mitzvah of offering a sacrifice. That half he shares with Isaac. It's not to contradict the trembling that he has over the prospect of sacrificing his son, not to contradict that, But to say that there's an element in his mind, which is parallel to the element in Isaac's mind. And you, the reader, might have thought that their minds were utterly divided from one another. Abraham's afraid, and Isaac is joyous. No, there is that togetherness. At the end of 8, you'll see there's another such qualification. Okay, 7. Then Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and he said, Father, and he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the offering? Now, I can't resist pointing out something here which isn't in the Rashi. Is there something funny about comparing this with verse 6?
Yeah, because if he is assuming that the sacrifice is taking place, why does he notice that the lamb's not there now?
Okay, I'll answer that. I was going to answer it after, since you asked it now, but that's not what I'm looking for. You see, this is what I said before. This was a routine with them, right? Now, they had to travel 2 days to get there. You don't take a lamb from home and lead it for 2 days. That's a pain in the neck. The lamb doesn't want to go, and it sits down, and it gets tired, and so on and so on. You go to the area where the sacrifice is, and you buy your sacrificial animal there. Okay, so going along, this town, that town, high fives, see you tomorrow, so on and so on. But now they're at the mountain. There are no markets on the mountain. Nobody there. So now he says, going up the mountain, so what happened to the sacrifice? That's not it. But in verse 6, how many things are they taking up the mountain with them?
2.
Read again.
3. Fire.
How many things are they taking up the mountain with them?
And a knife. So
In verse 6?
3. Fire, knife.
so he didn't bring the
Wood.
knife.
Wood. There would fire.
Wood, fire, and knife is 3, right? How many is mentioned now?
2.
What's missing?
The knife.
The knife is missing. Why is that?
It's already in his hand.
He had it in his hand before.
He hit it.
Abraham had it in his hand before. That's where it was before, when it said he took it, right? Apparently, it's not visible. Hine means what's visible. Behold, right? Why did he hide the knife? So one of the commentators of the Shulchan Aruch says, when you go to slaughter an animal, hide the knife. Don't show the animal the knife.
Wow.
So one wants to say that's what triggered his question. Until now, I saw the knife, which means we didn't have the animal. And now suddenly the knife's not here and there's no animal? What's that, Dad? How does that work? Why is it, right? Usually you hide the knife when the animal's here. And there's no animal here. And now he gets the answer that, that's the shock. Okay, so now God says to him, Abraham says to him, in 8, God will seek out for himself the lamb for the offering, my son. You could ask what the words my son are doing there. He's not suspicious that Philip from down the street, took his place, right? And if you like, although it doesn't fit the trup, I'm saying that for the recording, but if you like, you could read it this way: God will seek out for himself the lamb for the offering, my son. The offering, my son.
Right.
The offering, my son. Offering, my son. Offering, my son. Right. Yeah. And that's exactly, he totally does communicate that. Look at Rashi. He will see and choose for himself the lamb, and if there will be no lamb, then my son will be for a burnt offering. Now watch. Rashi explains it together. And although Isaac understood that he was going to be slaughtered, they both went together with one accord. Because now the question will be, Isaac learning that he's it, will he lose his joy in performing the mitzvah? And the answer is no, he doesn't lose that. He adds it to his mental set. Both father and son now have a double mental set, both the joy of performing the mitzvah and also the trembling over the sacrifice of Isaac, and they're going together.
Wow.
Their minds are joined. So the first together is joining half of Abraham's mind with Isaac's mind. And now, the new together says you're joining the two halves of Abraham's mind with the two halves of Isaac's mind. That's just really beautiful. And you see that the words together say something. Something which you wouldn't naturally have taken into account. Yeah.
I used to have a question on something you previously mentioned. The part that says we will return to you, why are we assuming that he's saying prophecy at this point and not just lying to the people that he's with?
Don't say it. Leave it out. Why should he lie to them?
I see.
In English, it's better because the word return is singular and plural. So we wouldn't have any commitment whatsoever. In the Hebrew, it's plural. But I think that he's just, there's no purpose in
He said, I will return to you, and then
But they don't say anything. We're going there to worship. Stay here with the donkey. We're going there to worship. The obvious thing is, if you stay here with the donkey, we're coming back to you.
The actual part, at least, is good. I see.
By the way, I had a friend who's not in this world anymore, and he pointed something out quite subtle here also. Who's carrying what?
Yeah, Isaac is carrying the wood.
Isaac's carrying the wood, and Abraham's carrying the fire and the knife. If you think of the midos, the characteristics of each of them, this fits very well. In my friend's, Yisrael Asher, he put it this way: you don't give the principle of strict justice fire and knife. Don't give that to strict justice. You give that to loving kindness.
What is loving kindness?
No, Abraham's loving kindness. Abraham's carrying the fire and the knife. Give the destructive weapons to loving kindness. You're safer that way. Give strict justice to carry the wood. The wood is neutral. Wood can be used all sorts of constructive services, right? As purposes. I thought it was a very subtle remark. Anyway, we're doing Rashi, but I
Isaac's supposed to be justice?
Isaac's strict justice. We saw that. We saw it last night.
Rav, I heard that the reason that Abraham put them in the same category, Ishmael and Eliezer.
There is a midrash that it's Ishmael and Eliezer, although there are other midrashim as well. But so, what do you want to bring out?
He put them in the same category as the animals, the chamor.
Yes. So according to that, it won't work. The midrash can't go together with that because it's supposed to be a statement about slaves.
Right.
And Ishmael is not a slave.
Okay.
I think the midrashim are split there. Okay. Whoops. What happened here? Oh, here we go. Okay, fine. So now, let's keep going. 9. They arrived at the place which God had spoken to him. Abraham built the altar there, arranged the wood, bound Isaac his son, placed him on the altar above the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand took the knife to slaughter his son. As I told you, that's clear that Abraham understands correctly that God wants him to slaughter his son. There's no mistake there. 11. An angel of Hashem called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham, and he said, here I am. So Rashi comments on this. Abraham, Abraham, this is an expression of affection that he repeated the name. Now it's true that there are times when Moshe is called Moshe, and right?
Yeah.
Is there anything in the text that would sort of motivate this comment of Rashi, trigger this comment of Rashi? Take a look back at verse 1. What does it say there? In verse 1, his name is not doubled.
His name is not doubled.
In verse 1, his name is not doubled.
Right.
It's only once. And here, when he's already passed the test, he's already performed the mitzvah as far as he's going to go, now he gets a special expression of endearment. Something make precious because he's done the job. I think that's what's pushing Rashi. Otherwise, why isn't it Abraham twice in both places?
Wow.
Why is it endearing to repeat his name?
I don't know. It's a rule, and it's a rule that, as I say, has other applications as well. I can't explain it to you. It's a good question. What is there in the repetition of the name that expresses endearment? I can't explain it. Yeah.
Could it be like he's like pretty much, I guess almost kind of like a way of like endearment where you're like calming them down, like, you know, Abraham, you know, like calm down maybe, or as far as like calming him, like saying like you don't have to like slaughter your son. As
I think it may work the other way. I think this is going to agitate him. It's not going to calm him down. It's going to agitate him, as you'll see from the very next thing, right?
Okay.
Because, let's go back to the verse 11. 12. He said, "Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, nor do anything to him." So, what's this nor? There seem to be two things. Don't do A and don't do B. Don't stretch out your hand against the lad, I suppose means you're taking the knife to slaughter him. Don't slaughter him. Then it says, and don't do anything. So look at Rashi. I'll get to the second half in a moment. Do not stretch forth to slaughter him. He, Abraham, said to him, God, if so, I've come here in vain. I came to slaughter him and not doing it. Let's do something. I'll inflict a wound in him and extract a little blood. Something. Said to him, do not do the slightest thing to him. Do not cause him any blemish. Now, I just want to remark here, unless it isn't absolutely crystal clear, you cannot derive from this story, this text, especially with Rashi as your guide, that the Jewish religion thinks that human sacrifice is an absolute abomination, savage, primitive idea. On the contrary, it would not be savage. Indeed, the Maharal says that this holding back means that the exercise was a failure. It should have been carried out.
Well,
It should have been carried out. Why did God cancel it, says the Maharal? Because the Leitzani Hador, the observers, the people who hear about it will misinterpret it as primitive or as associated with idol worship of the time, so forth and so on. But the idea that anything and everything can be sacrificed to God is not a foreign idea to Judaism. Indeed, Maharal points out, in the temple, what happened to all the things that were brought in to be offered to God? They were all destroyed, all of them. The animals were slaughtered and burned up, and part of the meal offering was burned up, and the wine and the water were poured out into holes in the wall of the mizbeach, the altar, and they were in a way that they were unrecoverable. The message is that in the presence of God, nothing can stand. When we received the 10 pronouncements at Sinai, when they heard the first word, they all died. Okay, God brought them back to life, but when God says I, nothing can stand in front of that I. So Abraham's right on track. Abraham's right on track. You told me to slaughter him. I'm invested in slaughtering him. Not that it was easy. I'm invested in slaughtering him, and if I don't do it, then I've done nothing. I came here and didn't accomplish anything. At least I'll make a wound, a symbolic slaughter. No, nothing. That's why he has to be told twice. Don't stretch out your hand to slaughter him, and don't even make a wound in him. Nothing at all. You have to understand why not. We'll come to that. But you have to know where the opposition is coming from. You want to say something? Yeah.
Human life is like more precious beyond anything else. We're allowed to like break Shabbos to save human life.
Okay, human life, you're saying, is more precious than anything else. You can break Shabbos in order to save human life. Okay, but let me ask you a couple of questions. Let's suppose that someone puts a gun to my head and says, bow to the idol. What am I supposed to do?
Not supposed to.
Shouldn't die.
I'm supposed to die. So apparently, avoiding idol worship is more important than human life. So human life is not the most important thing. There are some things for which you have to sacrifice human life. And certain times of sexual offenses also, if they're willing to die rather than perform them. So human life is not the most important thing. That's number one. And number two, let me remind you of something which people know, but often avoid thinking about. All human lives are finite. They will end sooner or later. So it isn't as if, you've got a ticket for eternity and you lose that. It's a question of when, on what conditions, what you could do, what you could have done, what you lost, right? But it's all a matter of degree and nuance. It's not a question of living forever.
But you can't offer offerings if you're dead. You can. What if you want to offer?
That's true, but then why should God allow people to die altogether? Because then they can't offer offerings anymore. And yet God does allow people to die. Indeed, He decrees when they should die. So the fact that after death I can't do mitzvahs isn't an absolute ticket to more life. Then the only question is under what conditions that the life should stop. Okay, now Rashi has a whole explanation, two explanations for the words here in the verse, which are quite problematic. Back to 12. Don't stretch out your hand, don't do anything. 4. Now I know that you are a God-fearing man, since you have not withheld your son, your only one, from me. And everybody wants to understand. Now I know. Before I didn't know. God knows everything. Knew everything. Doesn't learn anything new. So what does it mean? Now I know. So let's read the Rashi, and then maybe I'll share with you another pshat, which is even more on the surface. Said Rabbi Abba, Abraham said to him, to God, I will explain my complaint before you. Yesterday you said to me, for in Isaac will be called your seed. Isaac will be your continuation. He will be your future. Your generations will come from him. And now you contradicted and said, take now your son to slaughter him. Oops. Okay, that was number 2. Now you say to me, one second. Do not stretch forth your hand to take the lad. What's going on? Yes, no, yes. How? The Holy and Blessed said to him, I shall not profane my covenant, nor shall I alter the utterance of my lips. This is what I explained to you with the second Rashi. When I said to you, take your son, I was not altering the utterance of my lips, that Isaac shall be your continuation. I did not say to you, slaughter him. I didn't use the word to slaughter. I said, bring him up. You brought him up. Now take him down. I explained to you at the beginning of, a few days ago, that this does not mean that Abraham just made a silly mistake. Silly me. Oh, yes, right. God didn't say to slaughter him. Why did I think of that? He said, only bring him up. I should have known. It's a performance. Bring him up, take him down. Why was I worried? Why was I upset? Why did I think this was a test? No, that's not the right shot, boys and girls. That is not the right shot. The right shot is that lahalos la'ola in Hebrew means to slaughter. It's an idiom, and the idiom means to slaughter. So God says to him, yeah, but pay attention. If I wanted to withdraw the idiom, if I wanted you to treat it literally, which you shouldn't have done, couldn't have done, you'd have had no excuse to do it. If you thought this was a ballet performance and came here and put him up and take it down, I would have accused you of not obeying me. Because I told you idiomatically to slaughter him. But I want you to know that there's a true reading to my words. And therefore, I don't have to withdraw the words that I said. But that's all. That's one. And now, he says, for now I know, for now I have a response to Sodom and the nations who wonder, what is my love towards you? Now I have a reason, for they see that you fear God. In other words, it's not that I know, but that I can make it known to others. I can explain it to others, and I can justify it to others. Now, Rashi is using the word to know here as if it means to make known. As a matter of fact, there is another verse in the Torah which says it word for word. Now, I hope that I can find it quickly. I think it's in the beginning of Kisisa, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Now take a look on page 491. We say this every week. Shem said to Moses, verse 12. This is chapter 31, verse 12. Shem said to Moses, saying, now you speak to the children of Israel, saying, however, you must observe my Sabbaths, for it is a sign between me and you for your generations, to know that I am Hashem who makes you holy. It is a sign to know. Who's going to know?
The people.
The people. So what is the sign doing? The sign makes them know. The meaning of the word to know here is it is a sign to make them know. So even though it's ladas in Hebrew, the meaning is lahodia, to inform or make known. And that's the meaning of yadata here also. It means I have made known. I've made it known that you are a God-fearing man. And Rashi is explaining why. So why did God invest in that project of making it known? Because there are those critics who are going to say that the fact that God loves Abraham is just favoritism. Just favoritism. He didn't earn it and deserve it in any way. God says, now I can explain to them why he deserved it.
To other people.
Right, he says to them. That's what Rashi says. Good, okay. Yeah, there's a lot going on here, right? This is just a little bit. Okay, now that's all that I have to say about the, but since we mentioned it in terms of the Rashi, so I'll just add one more thing, or two more things. So Abraham saw a ram caught in the thicket, and he sacrificed in place of his son, whatever that means. Let's go to verse 15. The angel of Hashem called to Abraham a second time from heaven. And he said, now, the angel's speaking, but he's speaking God's words. That's why the myself here is capitalized. By myself, I swear, the word of Hashem, that because you have done this thing, not withheld your son, your only one, I'll bless you and I'll give you various blessings. Rabbi Mazman showed me a crucial midrash here, which Rashi doesn't bring. It says, I swear. God says, I swear. Says the midrash. What is this oath doing here? Shavua zu lama. Why is there an oath here? What for? The midrash says, Abraham said to God, you're promising me? You're promising me a benefit? Swear to me that you won't test me again. Not me and not Isaac. Swear you won't test us again. And God swears, I won't test you again. So if you think that Abraham sailed through it with his great faith and his gratitude, God spoke to him? No, he didn't sail through it. It was harrowing. Kavash es rachmav is the way Chazal put it. He conquered his mercies for his son, and he was ready to kill him to the extent that he said, that's it, never again. And this is the last test. Abraham had 10 tests, and everyone agrees this is the last of the 10 tests. even though he lives many decades after this, but it never happens again. Okay, that's one thing. And then, so there's a whole, and then verse 19, Abraham returned to his young men, and they stood up, went together to Beersheba. Abraham stayed at Beersheba. Anything excite you about verse 19?
Abraham went by himself.
Yeah, what happened to Isaac?
To Shiva.
Remember, he said, the Nashuva, we will come down. And Rashi said there was prophecy and everything else. How come it says Abraham returned, doesn't say that Isaac returned? So there's a deep secret here, which I will share with you. I mean, it's fairly well known, not very well known, fairly well known, but it's a deep idea. Take a look on page 717. This is Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 26, verse 42. I'll teach you how to read this verse also. 717. Okay, I'm going to read it to you. Pay attention. Pay attention. I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember. Now remember the land. What needs help here? What needs explanation? You can count on your fingers. Listen again. I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember. I'll remember the land. Got it? What do you got?
The extra will I remember after Abraham.
How many things are being remembered?
4.
4. How many times does it say I'll remember?
3.
3. That's weird. Either you say, I'll remember A, I'll remember B, I'll remember C, I'll remember D. You could do that for whatever reason. Or you say, I'll remember A, B, C, and D. But to say, I'll remember 3 times for 4 things is very weird. So you ask yourself, okay, so which one isn't remembered? Or which one is remembered left out? Which one is it left out for?
Isaac.
For Isaac. Says the Midrash, the ashes of Isaac are before me continuously.
Wow.
Something happened there.
He was burned.
Not all of Isaac came back. Something was burned up there. And that's what the verse is hinting in chapter 22 when it says that Abraham returned. Abraham returned, so to speak, complete, and Isaac returned with something left behind.
Did you say they put the ashes of what?
Of Isaac. As if he had been burned up on the altar. As if the sacrifice had actually taken place. Right? So there are various hints of this. Isaac was blind in his old age, says the Midrash, because when he was being put on the altar, the angels were crying, and their tears fell in his eyes. Then, Abraham was born outside the land of Israel, came to Israel, went down to Egypt. Jacob left Israel and had to come back. Isaac never left Israel. Indeed, we saw in a verse, Isaac was told he wanted to leave. There was a famine, just like his father went down to Egypt. He was on his way down to Egypt. God said, not you. Not you. Nope. You can't leave the land of Israel. There's something different about Isaac, and something sort of limited, protected, and sequestered about Isaac. All this has, so that's the hint in the verse when it says that Abraham returned. Isaac didn't return in the same way that Abraham returned.
So what happened? What was the thing that happened to him?
Although his body was not burned on the altar, although the knife did not slit his throat and let the blood out, he was offered as an offering to God, and that offering was accepted, and that means some of him was left behind on the altar, left behind in that incident. Not all of him was present for the rest.
What does that sounds like abstract? What does that mean by some of
I'm giving you. You're right. It is abstract. I'm giving you the hints that are in the verses, but I don't know if I can do justice to it in general terms. But I do. But it's clear that something was left behind. Okay, well, let me